Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the WIFA Federal Programs Committee meeting. Mr. Corral, could you please confirm the recording has been started?
Yes, the recording is in progress.
Thank you. All right. It is now 1:01 p.m. I would like to call to order this meeting of the WIFA Federal Programs Committee. Ms. Mendoza, please call the roll.
Yes. Blake Anderson. Britton Baxter is absent. Paul Gardner. Ray Montoya. Joe Olson.
Present.
Thank you. Kevin Rogers.
Here.
Thank you. Fernando Shipley.
Here.
Thank you. David Tenney.
I'm here online.
Thank you. Keith Watkins is also absent. Colin Wogenstall.
Present online.
Thank you. And Karen Peters.
Here.
Quorum is confirmed.
Thanks so much. Okay, for the record, please remember to identify yourself when making a motion or requesting to speak. For those attending virtually, please ensure that you are unmuted for any votes. In addition, if any member wishes to depart the meeting at any time, please announce your departure for our recording meeting records. Okay, agenda item number 2, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Has WIFA staff received any disclosures of conflicts?
Madam Chair, it's Chelsea McGuire, Assistant Director for External Affairs. We have not received any conflicts of interest disclosures.
Okay, thank you. If any member would like to identify and disclose a conflict for any item on today's agenda, they may do so at this time. Hearing none, agenda item number 3, the director's report. I'll pass it over to WIFA's director, Chuck Gorlat.
Thank you. Just a few things before we'll go into the Lindsay Denise part. First off, I want to say how happy I am about the refunding that Denise is going to give an update on. It was really, it's good to have those released funds available to make more loans without having to go out and borrow any additional money. We'll have more next week at the board meeting when Denise discuss with the board a proposed update for our 5-year financial plan. So there's been some question about what do we do with those funds that were released out of the reserves, and that's still TBD. On the consolidation question, you'll see on the agenda, proposed agenda item today, that's in direct reflection of y'all's inputs on updating WIFA's policies to make sure that we're not standing in the way of small system consolidation. Yeah, so we'll consider when we get there. And then I would just say more generally, I think that really reflects what we want the FPC to do. So certainly it's been my intent to have this be more than just a rubber stamp body that we bring you loans to and you sign off on them, but that sort of getting some feedback on the direction we should go. We'll say, looking forward to the next year or two, we have, at the board's direction, ramped up our goals for hitting priority communities, that targeting specific communities that the board wants to get financial assistance to, both in terms of SRF loans as well as water supply development financial assistance. And I think there's uncertainty in the future in terms of what supply and demand for the SRF loans are. Still, we see WIFA demand high in the high interest rate years, and we've seen our loan portfolio demand for WIFA loans fall somewhat in the low interest rate years. So looking at the macroeconomic picture about what will be the demand for those WIFA loans is a question. And then what money is there from the EPA to supply that? So again, there's questions out there as we have some of the federal stimulus money taper off, and the increasing desire of Congress to earmark money to specific pet projects rather than to give it to the states through the SRFs, put into some question how much we'll get in terms of capitalization grants relative to the historic norms. And so I think as we go into the future, we may be looking at a place where WIFA is more selective and incumbent on WIFA staff on the board as well as the FPC to provide some guidance on and thoughts about how do we prioritize, what kind of things do we want to emphasize the SRFs to be on. So nothing for discussion today, but I want hopefully that to be in everyone's mind that we are looking for as much input as the FPC wants to give on how do we prioritize WIFA's funds going forward in that world where we may see declining federal funds. Questions for me?
Any questions for Director Podolak?
All right, thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll go to agenda item number 4, which is the 2024 WIFA annual report to EPA. Lindsay Jones will lead that discussion.
Thank you, Director Peters. So I'll just go over briefly some of the highlights from the annual report. We have the whole report is in your packet, which, you know, apologies. I know it's very long, lots of numbers, lots of tables, lots of EPA acronyms and terms and things that are really just required as part of our EPA capitalization grant reporting requirements. But really what the EPA's annual report is, it's the end of the fiscal year report out on how we did throughout the fiscal year. We have at the beginning of every fiscal year, as you'll remember, we just recently passed the 2025 intended use plan. That's our plan for what we think is going to happen. And then at the end of the year, here's the plan, or here's the report of what actually happened over that fiscal year, who we closed loans with, all of the different things that the EPA is requiring. We'll go to the next slide here. So just to highlight a few of the big picture kind of items. So section 5 has information on state match. I put that on there just to really highlight the really great amount of work that WIFA has been able to do over the past 30 years operating the SRF programs. We've had over $800 million in federal funds and over $200 million in our local state matching funds, which is coming from our repayment dollars and everything else, go out the door in disbursements for projects all throughout Arizona. So over $1 billion fund that between the two clean water and drinking water funds at this point. So really, you know, happy about where we're at with this really well set up program. We also included in the report, so we have our section 7 FAFATA reporting, which I know it's a terrible acronym, but FFATA, which basically stands for the Federal Accounting and Transparency Act, which is the website where we go and we enter in data on a select number of our projects, which we are calling, it's the equivalency projects. It gets into a lot of the EPA terms and different things, but an equivalency project is basically a project we designate as being meeting the requirements of the federal capitalization grants. We need to designate, for example, if we had a $10 million capitalization grant, we would need a $10 million project, or we could have two $5 million projects, however many projects to get up to that amount in the cap grant that we're receiving. Those projects are going to have some extra requirements added on to their loan agreements. Before 2022, the equivalency requirements weren't overly burdensome. Now with the bill funds and the 2022 changes, we have what we are calling BABA, or the Build America, Buy America Act requirements. And that is really what we're seeing as the biggest burden for our equivalency projects going forward to meet those requirements. So really what you'll see is a whole bunch of tables in section 7, which is our FAFATA reporting. The main takeaway from that is you'll see zeros left to report for all of our clean water capitalization grants, meaning we met our equivalency requirements for all the clean water projects, capitalization grants, but we're still needing another large or several large drinking water projects to be accounting for our drinking water capitalization requirements. So we're still looking for some good project candidates for that. That's the big takeaway for our FAFATA reporting. And then we also have this binding commitment table, which we included with the information. And really the main takeaway from this is we more than exceeded our goals for binding commitments for general types of projects, both under drinking water and clean water funds. Just any of the base or bill supplemental type projects that are eligible for those funds, more than meeting the 120% that the EPA is wanting to see there in binding commitments for those funds. Where we're falling short just a little bit is in the lead service line funding, which I'll talk more about, and then the emerging contaminant drinking water funding, which we still have some dollar amounts to award between those two funds. We're really seeing that there's going to be plenty of demand for the emerging contaminants funds. I'm not overly concerned that we'll meet the binding commitment requirements for that grant program, but we are seeing a lack of demand for the lead service line funds that we're really wanting to make sure everyone is aware this fund is available. Right now, we have a lot of loan forgiveness that we could award to these types of projects. So if any of those projects are coming up for the communities, we want to make sure they're aware. We have the funds available. We're looking for those kinds of funds actively and are hoping that we'll see a few more coming through to get loans for that very specific lead service line replacement and inventory type activities. So that's really the main takeaway for the equivalency pages. I will also just note, hopefully you can kind of see it there, but the one big thing that those larger loans are really helping to do is to help us to meet those equivalency requirements, which then helps reduce the burden on the smaller to medium-sized loans so they don't have to have the extra BABA requirements added onto there. So just something to keep in mind as we're going through the rest of this fiscal year, approving projects. There's benefits to having those larger projects that are able to take on those extra requirements beyond the fact that they are also having large loan dollars. So I think those were the main points for this page. We can go on to the next slide here. And we just pulled out two of the tables, and I apologize. I know they're very small on the screen, but it's tables 8 and table 9 in the report there, which is really just highlighting all of the loans that were closed that past fiscal year and how much loan forgiveness that each were provided. So really historic levels of loan forgiveness being awarded, especially for those projects that are eligible for the emerging contaminants or the lead service line funds. And then we have the bill funds for the general projects that have also made it so that we can award greater amounts of loan forgiveness than we have in past years. So really excited about those results and the widespread of projects that are benefiting from the forgivable dollars. All right, so on to the next slide here. We have the list of all of the executed loans. And again, you know, small, lots of dollar amounts in there. I'm not going to go over all of the projects, but the main takeaway really is it was a tremendous year. It was a lot of work for WIFA staff. And I want to just say, you know, thank you to the project managers and the loan officers. I know that getting through all of the loans that through the SRF program, besides all of the other work we have with our other funding programs, was a tremendous amount of work over this last year. So really excited with where this ended up. We had 19 new projects on drinking water and 8 new projects on the clean water side with executed loans, with each funding program being around $160 million in loan amounts being executed. So really large dollar amounts, but also really widespread as far as small systems, large systems all throughout Arizona. And we're really seeing that trend continuing to go onward to giving that nice mix of assistance to the different communities. All right, and then the final slide here for you, and then I can open it up for any questions or any comments anyone has. But and again, I know it's very small. This is table 14 in the packet, which is WIFA's unliquidated obligations, which sounds a lot more, a lot scarier than it is. It's really just the capitalization grants that we still have open, that we have federal dollars that we need to spend. We need our borrowers to start asking us for more disbursements so that we can start spending down some of the federal dollars that we still have open, close out some of these capitalization grants that the EPA would really like us to see start closing out some of the older ones here. So we have more open cap grants than we'd like, but this is an issue that we've been aware of. We know people have been a little bit slower to spend than we'd like, and it's something that we're focusing on and really actively trying to make sure we're addressing the issue. We recently had our policy update that made modifications to how we're evaluating if a project is really ready to proceed. We've been looking at, Denise has been doing a lot of work with cash flow modeling and financial planning to making sure that we're focusing on this metric. And then we're also really set ambitious goals in our strategic framework to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable for making sure that when we're presenting the projects, they are going to be ready to start drawing down those funds within a certain time frame once they get that loan approved for them. So we're hoping this table really clears up by the next report and we get some of these older capitalization grants closed out. But it is actually really made more difficult because we have these special fundings like the lead service line funds and the emerging contaminant funds. We had some borrowers who were really excited about the funds, got started pretty early at trying to access the funds. And right now they're really getting ready to start spending that money, and we'll see those grant dollars start going out the door. So we're excited to see that, but it's a difficult balancing act to make sure that we are awarding the funds that need to get awarded while also having projects ready to proceed for especially these very specific funding sources like lead service line and emerging contaminants. We know that we have more than enough loan commitments on the clean water side, that we're gonna be seeing a lot of progress and spending down the clean water dollars that we have. So that's been a lot of progress over this last year. Some the bigger loan dollars that have been getting approved that really will help reduce that dollar amount. But we do, and then, like I said previously, we do know there's plenty of emerging contaminant type projects out there that we think are gonna be applying, that will be able to use up all of the drinking water and clean water emerging contaminant funds that we're gonna have, but we are still actively, like I said, looking for those lead service line projects. We know that lead service line inventories are due this month to ADEQ, so we're, keeping our fingers crossed that we don't find any, but if we do find lead service lines or any sort of projects that are eligible for that lead service line fund, that Arizona communities know that the fund is available. Right now, we have really a robust amount of loan forgiveness that we could give out for those types of projects. So making sure that everyone is aware of that financial incentive to come and get your lead service lines projects type funded. So that is the main takeaway. And let's see, I think those were all the notes. The biggest thing really is, yep, we are continuing onward. We are hoping for the lead service line projects. In a way, we hope nothing's gonna come up, but if they do, we're ready with the financial support for that. And yeah, I think that is all my notes for you. So I'm happy to take any questions or anyone has.
Questions for Lindsay?
I think if I can add one theme to that is, like the earmarking challenge, the more specific that Congress gets with, you have to spend this money on these exact types of sort of pet projects, makes it more difficult. So the lead service lines, and I think that's been a common theme among all the SRF agencies. I know DEQ's been helpful in pushing that to the federal level as well as the HOPS administration. So appreciate that, and we'll continue to work on that through our groups and through the admins.
Thank you. I really want to commend the staff. This is a big effort to get this report together and done on time and looking good. So good work to all of you. Lindsay, you're exactly right. It's a double-edged sword, right? You don't really want to find lead service lines because that presents a risk to public health. But if you do, then we have the means to address them promptly, and we'll go find them. So look forward to having more information on that maybe soon. Okay. If there are no other questions for Lindsay, we can go on to agenda item number 5, the Series 2024 refunding update.
Thank you. So Denise Olson, Assistant Director for Finance. We've had a busy few months, and if you go to the next slide, we've completed a refunding process. So we started in June, and then the big event was on September 10th, which is when we actually priced bonds. We also received some ratings, and if you go to the next slide, we met with both S&P and with Fitch, and we were able to maintain our AAA ratings. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we have a lot of cash, so we can pay down our debt. But I think the second reason, the one thing that they had a lot of questions on and paid a lot of attention to is our management portfolio, which is basically all of our loans. And so those loans are based on the projects that you all have vetted and approved through this committee, and making sure that that portfolio was strong enough to handle debt. So I think a lot of this ratings is also reflective of this committee and the board and the work that you do to support us. So kudos to the committee for everything you've done. It helped with our ratings. If you go to the next slide, on the day of pricing, a little bit of a story here. It was a very, very crowded market. There was over $13 billion that week that was hitting that market. Everybody was trying to sell their bonds before the election. So we had a lot of competition trying to get attention. We haven't been in the market in almost a decade, so I was a little nervous about having WIFA's name out there. But our underwriters did a great job. We did attract some big names. We had JP Morgan, we had Vanguard, BlackRock, Goldman Sachs. So we got the big names to buy our debt. And then we also competed very favorably when it came to the interest rate. We had 2.63%, which is a great rate. And we were oversubscribed. I think we had $100 million of debt, and we had about 300 million in orders. So we did very, very well in the market. If you look at the bottom of this chart, it shows some comparisons with some other big names. that were there that same day, like Texas Transportation Commission and Washington DC. And we fared very well when you compare our debt to those deals. So overall, it was a very, very good transaction. If you go to the next slide.
Yes, Jeanette.
So oversubscribed is a term I'm not familiar with. So does that mean that demand was higher than
Right.
availability?
So basically, we had 100 million to sell,
Mhm.
but there was 300 million in orders. So more orders than we had to sell. So it was a good day. Next slide, please. So the net results for the program is we had $4.6 million in debt service savings. And then if you remember, we also freed up a debt service reserve, which is cash that goes back into our loan pool. So the total transaction was about a $38.6 million benefit to the SRFs. So with that money, we can move forward. It gives WIFA in its loan programs a lot of flexibility there. And the next slide. Yeah, so one more thing is with this transaction, we decided to do an investor website. So Chelsea and Garrett worked really hard on this. It's up and running. It's got all of our bond information. So if you're curious and want to see what we've been doing and any of the documents, it's all available on this website. So we're pretty proud of that. So that's also a new thing that came up during this whole refunding process. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Denise? Be online. Well, congratulations, Denise and WIPA staff. Terrific outcome, particularly since it's been so long. So that's just a great testament to the work you're all doing, and we look forward to spending that additional money. Well, of course, we're investing that additional money. Excellent. All right, then, without any questions, we'll go on to agenda item numbers 6A and 6B, which are noticed as consent agenda items. And any item on the consent agenda may be removed and discussed as a regular agenda item upon the request of any member of the committee. A reminder to those attending virtually, please ensure you are unmuted for a vote. Does any member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Okay, then hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Chair Peters, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Fernando, I'll second.
Right. With no further, is there any discussion on the motion? No further discussion, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, the motion passes. Thanks very much. We'll now move on to our regular agenda items. So members of the public wanting to speak on a specific agenda item may request to speak prior to the chair opening discussion on that item. For instructions on how to submit a speaker's card, please refer to the notes on proceedings located at the end of today's meeting agenda. So agenda item number 7 is loan resolution 2025-020, Town of Quartzsite. Scott Connolly will lead the discussion and introduce any representatives of the applicant who are present or online.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman Peters. The town of Quartzsite is requesting funding for its energy savings project. They're requesting 1.25 million for a 20-year loan. The town currently is experiencing annual electric costs of roughly 81,000 at their well number 3 well site. The proposed solution to reduce these costs and to save greenhouse gas emissions is to install a fixed tilt ground mounted solar PV system at the well site. And funding would also include a new security fence for the layout. For the 12 months period ending September of 2023, well number 3 site consumed 512,000 kilowatt hours. The solar PVC system is expected to provide 385,000 kilowatt hours, thus resulting in a projected 75% reduction in the current electricity costs. WIFA staff is recommending up to 20,000 technical assistants to contract with the Council of Governments for assistance with Davis-Bacon wage requirements and related acts. The town has one debt secured by a pledge of drinking water system revenue and has achieved coverage ratios necessary to qualify for WIFA's top loan security level. The town has also implemented annual rate increases to maintain coverage performance. WIFA staff further recommends $545,000 in forgivable principal for WIFA procedure 3.20.1 as the community meets the qualifications of a disadvantaged community due to median household income and with a full-time population, median household income of $19,017, which is below 90% of the state median household income. And it is also with a priority community. The project manager was Lindsay Mills. The loan officer was Evan Marsh. And the borrower representatives online, we have Kiki Tanel, the deputy manager, and in the audience here, we have Edward Farrell and Justin Rundle from Verigy, the solar company. Staff proposes the FPC recommend approval of resolution 2025-020. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Does the committee have any questions for WIFA staff? None. Does the committee have any questions for the applicant, either online or here today with us? Do we have any requests for public comment on the item?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Any additional committee discussion? If not, may we have a motion on agenda item number 7 for loan resolution 2025-020?
Madam Chair, this is Fernando. I'll go ahead and make that motion.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, this is Kevin Rogers. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
You have a curiosity question. So I know that when you do solar panels, that there are some tax credits you can harvest. Is that calculated in this or not?
Defer to the people that have the knowledge.
If the applicant representative could come forward,
Of course, cities are probably tax exempt then, right?
certainly. And please identify yourself for the.
I'm Justin Rundle. I'm an energy engineer. I work for Verigy. And the question was, is there any federal tax credits or incentives for this? And the answer is there's a program called the Inflation Reduction Act. It has a standard 30% tax incentive for towns. Before you had to be a taxpayer, now you can be a public agency and still get that 30% tax credit. So Courtside is expecting a 30% tax credit. They may qualify for another 10% adder because of being a low-income community, but that 10% adder is competitive and they may not get it. So 30% for sure and maybe 40%.
And is this already factored into the loan amount or not?
No.
Okay.
Yep. Very good.
Is that a refundable credit? So they actually get that amount?
They'll apply to the IRS and they'll act like they're a taxpayer even though they're not. And they'll request this 30% credit at the end. And we hope with 90% certainty they'll get it. You know, there could be administration changes or something like that. But yeah, they just apply for the IRS through the IRS, and then the IRS sends them a check in June or July after they file their taxes in April or whenever they file. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, any other discussion on the motion or questions for the applicant? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion is approved. Thank you. Agenda item number 8, loan resolution 2025-021. Black Canyon City Water Improvement District. Scott Connolly will lead the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Black Canyon Water Improvement Black Canyon City Water Improvement District, excuse me, is requesting $525,000 in a 15-year loan to replace all meters that have been in service long enough to have registered 800,000 gallons or more. The aging meters would be replaced with new automatic meter read technology meters to allow proximity meter reading. The benefit of having more precise meters are that they allow for better record of water usage, which can lead to water conservation and provides more accurate consumption billing. Black Canyon City Water Improvement District qualifies under WIFA's definition as a disadvantaged community, and it's also a priority community. In addition, the project categorically qualifies for Green Project Reserve by replacing old meters with water efficient AMR meters. The district has one existing loan with WIFA secured by Pledge of Drinking Water System revenue. They also have a capital improvement fund, which accumulates approximately $100,000 a year and is used to provide maintenance and funding for smaller capital needs as required. Projected coverage exceeds WIFA's threshold of 1.5 times, which qualifies it for WIFA's top loan security level. The district's local fiscal capacity score, the LFC score, is above 80, and its median household income of $48,468 is below 90% of the state median household income. So it qualifies as a disadvantaged community under those criteria. Accordingly, WIFA staff recommends $346,250 in forgivable principal for WIFA policy 3.20 and procedure 3.20.1. Staff proposes the FPC recommend approval of resolution 2025-020. The project manager is Morgan Burgess. The loan officer is Anthony Noguera. And the borrower representative online, Robert Hannes, the field manager, and David Moore, the district chair. So thank you.
Scott, does the committee have any questions for WIFA staff? No. Does the committee have any questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Yes, is the applicant? Did you say, Scott, they're online, right? Okay.
Yes, this is Joe. It's just a quick clarifying question. Obviously, with AMR and AMI technology, provides a lot of data for conservation. Is any of this information going to be provided to the ratepayers or customers to be able to view? Or is it more going to be for the billing folks to be able to have the interactions with customers on relevant data?
And Dave, your mic is enabled. Just go ahead and introduce yourself and you can answer the question.
Yes, I'm David Moore, the board chair for the Black Canyon City Water Improvement District. Would you mind repeating that question again? You broke up on my end.
Sure. Yeah, so with AMR, AMI technology, obviously, as in your loan request, there is a significant amount of conservation-related information that benefit ratepayers as it relates to their usage profiles, et cetera. I know some communities that go AMR are able to provide some type of whether portal or information directly to ratepayers. Other entities use it in their billing office to be able to have more of an engaged conversation with the customers. I was just curious if any of this information was going to be made public to the ratepayers themselves on their usage profiles, or is it going to be more just to address on the billing inquiry side?
Oh, no. The tool itself, we sincerely hope we're going to be able to utilize that to inform the ratepayers of what's going on with any anomalies within their billings, but also to help us to identify those and to speed up the billing process itself.
Yep, copy that. Thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question as well.
Yes, go ahead.
With these age meters, and I applaud your upgrading the infrastructure.
Mr. Rogers, can you make sure your mic is on?
It's on.
Okay, good. Thanks.
With your upgraded meters, and I applaud that action, have you considered or assessed what the new meters might help with unidentified water loss?
Uh, he's a teacher.
Yes, Mr. Moore,
Yes,
did you hear the question?
I did hear the question. I was asking if our field manager was also unmuted, but if not,
Mr. Moore, I can unmute your field manager, but I don't see anybody by that name on our list. Is he logged in under a different name on the Zoom?
Robert Hannes.
Robert, if you are on, could you just raise your hand using the raise hand feature and I can unmute you that way? Okay, it doesn't look like he's on.
Okay, Mr. Moore, it's all yours.
Okay. I'm sorry to say this again, but could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. With the new meters you're installing with their improved accuracy, has there been an assessment or an attempt to identify the amount of water loss, unidentified water loss that this might help identify?
Yes. The answer to that is we hope with more accurate billing that we will be able to identify the water loss easier than we are able to now. We did a strict inventory of all of our meters, which is about 870 of them, and found that there were dozens and dozens of people that actually had no meter readings at all for years. And our previous field representative wasn't reading some of them, but we identified those and replaced all of those meters, which were approximately 43. In any event, this will give us a better idea on what our actual physical water use is by our public using the water compared to what we know we're pumping. So yes, this should be very beneficial in identifying that water loss.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Bob Hannes, Field Manager for Black Canyon City Water.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Just to add to that, we're hoping that the real-time data speeds up our response to the water leaks and speeds up our repair and work orders that so that we can address leaks and then minimize lost water.
And I'm assuming as you set this system up, you'll be able to set leak alarms and those types of parameters to send you the warnings as they occur at different residents.
That is correct.
That will be very beneficial. You'll find you'll learn a lot about your customers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the applicant? Are there any requests for public comment on this item?
There are not, Madam Chair.
Any other committee discussion on the motion, or I should say on the item? If not, may we have a motion on agenda item number 8 for loan resolution 2025-021.
Madam Chair, this is Kevin Rogers. I make a motion for resolution 2025-021.
Thank you.
This is,
Oh, go ahead.
this is Fernando, I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion is approved. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 9, loan resolution addendum A 2025-022, City of Buckeye. Scott Connolly will lead the discussion on this item.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. City of Buckeye has requested a project scope change to WIFA loan 910196-22. On the original construction plans for the Sundance wastewater treatment repairs project included upgrades and repairs to two sequencing batch reactors and other repairs designed to return the plant to its 3 million gallons per day capacity. Following subsequent evaluation, the city now desires to shift from sequencing batch reactor technology to membrane bioreactor technology. No additional financial assistance is requested with this addendum request. Previous board action included the June 2023 approval of an addendum resolution to modify the existing loan and expand the scope of the original project to include replacement of existing influence screens for rag and grit removal, odor scrubbers for hydrogen sulfide gas mitigation, and the replacement of backup generators for emergency power. All the wastewater treatment facility assets are beyond their effective and useful life. Moving to the proposed MBR technology will allow the city of Buckeye to implement the best available technology at the lowest life cycle cost of all the proposed options that they considered. The cost benefit from the scope change is valued at $2 million over the 20-year life cycle. While the anticipated project's cost will exceed the loan amount, WIFA staff is confident the city is in a position to cover this excess. Staff proposes the FPC recommend approval of addendum 2025-022. The project manager was Michael Vidare. The loan officer was Evan Marsh. And on the borrower representatives online, we have Larry Price, the special districts manager, and Stephanie Wilson, the water resource management assistant. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Does the committee have any questions for WIFA staff? Does the committee have any questions for the applicant? Are there requests for public comment on the item?
There are no requests, Madam Chair.
Is there any additional committee discussion? None, maybe we have a motion on agenda item number 9 for loan resolution addendum A 2025-022.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of loan resolution addendum alpha 2025-022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Fernando. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion is approved. Thank you. Okay, then. Agenda item number 10. Recommend approval of new policy 3-22. I guess that's how you say that. III-22 loan assignment policy. Denise Olson will lead the discussion.
Thank you. So this is a new policy that accommodates mergers and acquisitions, especially for smaller systems. As we've heard previously, sometimes these transactions actually benefit the community as they improve water system reliability and can lead to more affordable services. This policy will allow us to deal with mergers and acquisitions as a possibility up front versus having to deal with it individually in various loan agreements that we already have. This language is in this policy will be standard language in our loan documents going forward. We still want to mitigate risk. And so the policy does not relieve the borrower from repaying the loan. The assignment will be vetted by staff and must be approved by the director in writing. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee for Denise? Yes, Fernando.
My question is I would imagine that this has been done by other areas. Is this something that you farmed and got information, not reinvented the wheel? I guess is what I'm asking.
Thank you. That's a good question. So we did reach out to a couple of different other SRF funds and looked at their language and borrowed some of it. So yes, this is something that others are doing.
So it's something similar has been used.
Correct.
Okay.
Fernando, like most of the other policies, we've tried to keep policy statement by the board at a high level. The actual loan addendums that we brought last time had some detail on what exactly the debt service coverage is. So we didn't write that in the policy. So that could be done on a situation by situation basis. So some of those details we have the ability to look at each individual loan and figure out what those things are. So we think this covers that high level thing of facilitate these, make these work, and then we can fill in the details at the second one.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members?
Or just a comment.
Yes.
I appreciate the flexibility of WIFA staff, really looking and grappling with an item that was brought up, as Chuck said at the last FPC, but also finding a solution, because it was really a non-necessary hurdle, but it only really became apparent after the multiple actions that were dealt with at that prior committee meeting. So applaud at staff's efforts on just, not just the research, but the proposed outcome. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. I would echo that. As I think I shared at the last FPC, or maybe the board, I don't remember. System consolidation is very beneficial in a lot of circumstances with the smaller systems. And so having a policy of this nature clears the way for those to go forward when there are WIFA loans outstanding. And so I really appreciate the work to get this in place. Look forward to board discussion and action on it. All right. Does the committee have any, there's no applicants. Like that. Do we have any requests for public comment on this item?
We don't have that either, Madam Chair.
Any additional committee discussion? Hearing none, may we have a motion on agenda item number 10 for new WIFA policy 3-22?
I'll jump in. Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of new policy 3-22.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, this is Kevin Rogers. I second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion is approved. Thanks very much. That takes us to agenda item number 11, the call to the public. This is the time for any additional public comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Have we received any requests for public comment?
We have not, Madam Chair.
Then agenda item number 12 is agenda development, the opportunity for members to identify any topics they would like placed on an agenda at a future meeting. Chuck.
The only outstanding item we had request from you guys was the policy. So at this point, we don't have anything else in the hopper committee.
Very good. All right, then agenda item number 13 is to announce the next meeting, which is scheduled for December 10th, 2024 at 1 p.m. in Phoenix, Arizona. Get a month off.
If I can, for the committee and the public's benefit, the items that you recommended today to go to the board, we plan on bringing those to the board at next week's meeting, October 16th. That agenda will be out tomorrow, so look for that. But I anticipate everything that you forwarded to be on that agenda when it comes out tomorrow.
Excellent. There's no other business. I will adjourn this meeting of the WIFA Federal Programs Committee. The time is now 1:49 p.m. We are adjourned.